Hi there, welcome back to my channel, Scrap and Coffee. Yeah, I'm gonna start a new project in this video. It's a little bit overdue because I was planning on having this on my channel earlier, but yeah, sometimes life gets in the way. That's how it goes when you have 3 little kids. And at the moment I'm having a terrible cold. So, but I decided to try and make this video anyway. Is it my best decision ever? Probably not, but we'll see how it goes. I'll try to keep the sniffing and the coughing down in the video. So I came up with a chipboard covered folio, and it should be in this way. This is a mock-up, and there will be some changes on this, but it's to give you a little bit of an idea of what we're gonna make. I'm going to make it with this rose pink color. I believe that's what it's called. Yes, rose pink. And I don't use colored cardstock for my project base a lot, but I did something new that I wanted to try. And I'm going to use for decorating this collection kit that's from Studio 73. So I was saying I'm going to use this collection from Studio 73, Land Down Under. This is an Australian brand, and I found it at a local scrapbook store here in Melbourne called J Craft. I will have a link down below in the description box. In her store you will find more collections of Studio 73. It's just something different. That's how I feel about it. And of course I wanted to do an Australian themed project. It was actually the first thing that I wanted to do on my channel once I've moved to Australia, but to be honest, I needed a little bit of time to figure out what I was gonna do with it. But it's I love the colors in the collection and all the animals. I should probably be learning all the names of these animals, but I'm not there yet. But I'm loving the colors in here, but it's really, I feel this collection is, if you are a layout maker, it's really fun to work with. And it gives you some nice patterns, but also some cut aparts, and there are some extra sheets included that are single-sided with embellishments. So we have our papers, and then here we have some single-sided sheets with some cards, some fuzzy cutting elements, here's some more. So I figured that, and of course some animals here. The koalas that are officially now my new favorite animals. They are so darn cute. And this is another paper right here. So I thought that pink would work really well with this collection. I'm gonna play with it, see what we can come up with. Of course I have a little bit of an idea in my head, but it's always a big question mark if I can make it work. So like I said, a chipboard covered folio. It's going to be about the same size as our previous project, a little larger, about 6 1/4 by 8 1/4. And this is going to be like a folio. There's not a whole lot to it on the inside. This is not for like 50 photos. It's for a few photos, and it doesn't always have to be a really elaborated project, right? Sometimes something simple can be just what you need. So that's what this is going to be. I have a chipboard frame here. We are going to do it, but it will probably end up on the outside of the cover instead of on the inside, so we have a little bit more room to play with some elements. Then we have a very simple waterfall element here on the cover for photo opportunity. And we're going to use a magnet to keep that closed. And then on this side we're going to have a flap with several pockets for things of different sizes to put in there. So, and that's all that's to it. It's only going to have like a 3/4 inch spine. So yeah, large in size, so we can put full-size photos in there, but there's not going to be a whole lot to it, as you can see. But this is what we're going to make. So what we are going to need is our chipboard to cut to size and some cardstock to wrap our cover, to make our cover. Okay, so I have my materials ready. I zoomed out a little bit so we can get all of this a little bit better in frame. I have 2 sheets of medium weight chipboard, 12 by 12 inches. And I have 3 sheets of my 12 by 12 inch cardstock. I get a lot of questions on the weight of cardstock that I use for my projects. I like to use 80 pound which is often, because it's not like 1 and 1 that you can say 80 pound is always the same GSM, but it's between 220 and 230 GSM. I believe this one is 220. So 3 sheets of those, and then I have a paper trimmer. You can do this however you like. I like to do it with my viscous paper trimmer and combination with a straight blade. Just make sure that you have, if you have it, an older blade in here. I always mark my blades with a pencil when they are getting a little rough, and then I know that I can use that for my chipboard. So because cutting chipboard will make your blade go dull really fast. So we're gonna start with cutting the chipboard, of course, and we need 2 pieces that are 6 3/8 of an inch by 8 3/8 of an inch, and I'm going to start with cutting the 6 3/8 inch measurement first. So sometimes your chipboard has a little bit of a rough edge, so I'm just choosing an edge which I can see my measurement pretty easy. So 6 1/4, 6 3/8. So I try to line it up there and really push down on my blade, go up and down. Now there are a lot of people that just like to turn it over, line it up again, and then cut it through, because you will basically never cut through at once with your paper trimmer. If that works for you, then sure, that's a really good way of doing it. I'm for some reason always off when I do it that way, so that's why I finish it off with my straight blade. And then the smaller piece is your scrap piece, but we are going to use it, so don't put it too far away. And now we are going to cut this one to 8 3/8. So 8 1/4, 8 3/8. And basically do the same thing. And sometimes I have to do it twice, but so this is my first piece. I need 2 of those, but I will cut the other one out of my other sheet. Let's do that first, right? So I have these 2 scrap pieces now. I try to do it in a way where it makes sense what I'm doing, but okay. So again, I'm going to cut the 6 3/8 inch first. So that's the height of the folio, and all my pieces need to have that same height. So it's just easy when you use your scraps for your spine. So the downfall of doing this is that I really have to put my stuff to the side, and I always struggle with room a little bit, but especially when I'm filming, but that's not always the case. So again, the smaller piece is my scrap piece, and I will cut this to 8 3/8. Okay, and then we have 2 identical pieces. Now this scrap piece that I just cut off, we can use for our spines. So I need 2 that are 3/4 of an inch. So we can easily cut that out of here. I can also measure that on the other side. And I will do one more. Now I'm using what I call the traditional wrap method, where I just wrap all my pieces with the cardstock, and not the lay flat or the easy wrap method. If you want to use that, that's totally fine, but you do want to keep in mind that the amount of room that you have, the space, will be less. So because I have a gap between my chipboard pieces that you will see in a second when we are going to place our chipboard on our cardstock, my actual spine height is somewhat higher than just the 3/4 of an inch that we've cut right now. If you're using the lay flat method or the easy wrap, however you want to call it, you will lose that extra space. So you might want to add, maybe you want to make it an inch or 7/8 of an inch. You just keep that in mind, okay? Okay, so we have our 2 spine pieces. Then we want to have, so these are scraps. We have our 2 larger pieces here. And from this, I want to cut my front panel and my frame. So they should be the same size. And they are 5 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to leave that at 5 5/8 of an inch and cut it to 6 3/8. Now we can also break it down to 5 1/2 or something, but why would we make that extra cut, right? That's just a perfect measurement as it is. So 6 3/8. And that will give us our front panel. And then I will, another scrap piece here. I might just do a project with small chipboard pieces for a small mini album or something where we can use our scrap pieces of chipboard sometime. And I will do the same thing with this piece. So the same thing, that 5 5/8 by 6 3/8. And then I might cut that one down for the frame, but for now I'm gonna leave it as it is. Okay, so that's my scrap piece. And we should have 2 identical pieces here. Yeah. Okay, so let's get this out of the way. So I will write the measurements down. There is a cutting guide, of course, on my website. Don't forget about that. But it's, I don't want to say but. I'm still working on it now, but once the video is uploaded, it will be there, of course. So there is a link in the description box. 6 3/8 by 5 5/8, exactly the same. These are 3/4 of an inch by 6 3/8 and 6 3/8 by 8 3/8 of an inch. So from everything we have 2 pieces. Now I'm going to wrap it with cardstock, and what I like to do is cut my pieces to height before I start placing my chipboard on there. So my folio is going to be 6 3/8 inches in height, and I want to have an inch on top and bottom. So I'm going to cut it to 8 3/8. For 2 pieces, I'm going to do that and leave it at 12 inch in width. And you can also cut it to 8 1/2 if that's easier, of course. Okay, and then the other one, I'm going to cut to the same height. And then cut it down to 6 inches. So on the 12 inch side. Okay, so I have that large piece left there. I ended up cutting my pieces to 8 1/4, by the way. It was easier to measure out for me. So I'm going to get this out of the way. There is a little downfall of this method, right? This is my personally preferred method of doing my covers. Because I just love that look where it's all one piece, it's nice and sturdy. But the downfall is that you need to combine your cardstock, at least I need to combine my cardstock. I don't have really large cardstock where I can do this out of one piece. So I have overlappings on my cover. So I have one here and I have one here at the back. So now normally I don't really mind, with a regular album you probably end up having it on the back. That's all fine with me, that doesn't bother me. But right now it ended up right here. And I'm going to try to get it both my overlappings on my back panel. Because I really want to keep this somewhat clean actually. So we're going to see if I can make that work. So for that, we need to combine these pieces of cardstock, right? But before I'm going to do that, I'm going to check if what I want to do actually works. So I would have to overlap them with about 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to roughly place that on my work surface in that way. And I'm going to see that if I have a large piece, Yes. What you want to make sure of is that your overlappings are not too close to your chipboard edges. So to these edges. You want to ideally have them at least 1 inch away from that. Because if they're close to it, you might have cracking or they might give you trouble, basically. So I hope that I did my measurements right with this. And I need one piece we can put to the side of the 6 3/8 by 5 5/8. Okay, so we can make that work. I might end up a little closer here, but that's just fine. So this works. I did my math right. So what I will probably do is start on this side, about 1 inch from the edge, and then I can make it work. Yeah, that's gonna be just fine. Okay. So we can combine our cardstock now. That's in the way that I had in mind. So what I'm going to do now, I need to keep the texture of my cardstock in mind a little bit. I'm going to get a pencil and a ruler. You don't really have to do this, but this is something that I like to do, is give myself a little bit of a guideline. So I mark 1/2 inch along the cut edge with my pencil, and then I'm going to add a strip of 3/8 inch tape. And I try to stay closer to the cut edge than to my pencil line. I give that a little bit of a burnish. Remove that tape backing. So now my next piece is going to be the 6 inch piece, and I'm going to use my pencil mark as a guideline. So I'm going to line up the bottom edge, use my pencil line as a guideline to bring that piece towards the top and drop it. And then I will repeat the same thing right here. And then again, remove that tape backing and get my second 12 inch piece and repeat the same thing. So I use my pencil line as a guideline to get it somewhat straight. Okay, so we have this large piece here. I'm going to give myself some guidelines for a start. So I'm going to go 1 inch from the edge here. So I just do that with a pencil. It's just a little guideline to get me started. You don't have to go all the way to the end, because basically when you have your first pieces on, at least that's how I do it, I use my ruler to guide me for the rest of it. Okay, so our chipboard pieces, they need a coverage. Personally, I don't like to do it with wet glue. I always covered it with double-sided tape, basically completely. But I tried this glue stick. It's from Elmer's. It's a purple glue stick. I'm not sure if it has it really has a name, but it goes on purple, it dries clear, it's yeah, it sticks to more surfaces, that's all it says. So I'm not sure what it's called, but I find it's a good glue for putting my chipboard pieces on, but that's the only thing that I use it for. That's basically what I'm trying to say. So I'm going to start with a large panel. So I'm going to go backwards basically, so my overlappings will go in the place where I want it to go. So I will probably add it here a little bit, because it takes a little bit of time to get this on, but it's definitely quicker than doing my double-sided tape. So I need to give this a good coverage. It's a little bit of a slimy glue actually. So now I'm going to use my guidelines. They make a little corner there. I'm going to put this corner, line that up there. And this gives me some wiggle time. If I would be using double-sided tape, I don't really have that wiggle time, but now I do. So because I cut my cardstock to 8 1/4, I have a little bit more space on the bottom than on the top. Well, that's fine, as long as you have enough to wrap over. So I'm giving that a little bit of a burnish. I have to be a little careful because it might slip on me just a little bit. Now I need to determine the space between my chipboard pieces, and I like to do that with some spacing tape. Now my 1/4 inch tape is the best option that I have at the moment. So that is what it will be, 1/4 inch tape. And I'm just placing that on my cardstock up against my chipboard. And there are several reasons why I like to do it with tape, because it also helps me later on with finishing off the cover. And next up we have a spine piece. So I'm going to give that some glue. And now I will get my ruler in, and I'm going to use my ruler to line up my pieces at the bottom. So that is my guide there. I'm going to push this up against my ruler and bring it along that tape edge. You know, sometimes it happens that I place it slightly on my tape. Well, it happens, but we try to place it next to it. And then I will have to do that tape backing again. So there's a lot of repeating, but it's the most important thing right now is that we have the right order of our pieces. And then we're gonna have another large panel. Okay, so that is covered. Again, my ruler to line it up, and I'm using the tape. So just take your time on this. Now I noticed that my cardstock is starting to curve a little bit. That's because of the type of glue that I'm using. I think that's just something that I have to accept. That will be fine once we're done, I'm guessing right now. Okay, next up, another spine piece. Okay, once again my ruler in place to make sure that everything is lining up. And then we need one more time some spacing tape here. And then our front panel piece. So that's the last one that we are going to place down. And once again I will use my ruler, and I see that I haven't lined it up here nicely. I hope I still have the... Oh, I do. That's nice of this glue, right? That was not lined up nicely, but now it is. Maybe I moved it with placing the tape. That's also possible, I don't know. So same thing here. I feel that this piece might be a little on the crooked side, but we'll see. Okay, now I have quite some space left here, and we're gonna cut that off. I just like to give myself a little bit of a mark, so I mark 1 inch from that chipboard edge, and then I know where I can cut. So on this side, that's pretty easy to do, right? But on the long side, that's difficult, and that's why, oh, everything is falling. That's why I just like to do that at forehand. Okay. Okay, so this is what we have at the moment. We're going to wrap this over. And to reduce bulk on our corners, we are going to cut our corners off. Now you can eyeball that. I have actually a video on my channel where I show you how you can make your own miter tool out of your chipboard scrap pieces. But I don't have them here at the moment, so I'm basically going to eyeball it somewhat. I'm going to use my ruler for it. What you want to do is make sure that you are about 1/8 of an inch away from your chipboard corner. So I just always like to make a pencil mark, and I will tell you in a second why that is. But you see how I have some space between my chipboard corner and that pencil line? That's what I'm aiming for. So I'm going to do that on all 4 of my corners, and you try to do it in about a 45-degree angle, but I'm eyeballing that at this moment, and that's probably not giving me the best results, but that's not, you will also notice later on that that's not the most important part of it. Okay, so I've marked that on all 4 sides, and then I'm going to place tape around the perimeter of my cardstock. I like to do that with 3/8 inch tape, but if you want to use 1/4 inch tape of a different size that you have, all of that will work, right? And I'm going to start placing it here, where my pencil line is right here, where I just go over the pencil line. So when I cut off my corner, I have tape all the way to the cut edge. And you don't have to go all the way to the corner, because that's just waste of your expensive product. And also here, that's also where I end, right? So I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. Okay, so now that that is on, give that a burnish. I'm going to do the same thing on my chipboard edge. It's just something that I prefer. You will notice that I take quite a few steps in making my covers, and you can take from it what you like and leave from it what you don't like. But I'm pretty particular in how I make my covers. So it always takes me a little bit more time, but I don't mind. I enjoy the process, and I just like to, when I spend all this money on products and pattern paper and everything, I just like to end up with a good end result, right? With a nice cover that's going to last me a good amount of time. So I remove the tape backings here, but I don't throw them away. I have them lying right there, because if I'm for some reason not able to finish up what we're doing, cleaning up this inside cover, I can place them back and prevent dust collecting on these bits here. Now this part I like to do with 1/4 inch tape. Again, you can use whatever size you have or want to use. I'm gonna go around the perimeter of this chipboard here, and I am going to do something. Sometimes I make a little bit fun of myself because I'm so precise in how I do everything. But I'm going to push my tape in my little gusset areas here. So I don't just pull the tape straight away all the way to the other side. I just like to bring it along that edge, give it some space to go in there, and push it in that gusset. So that takes a little bit more time in doing this tape placement, but I feel that in the end, combined with some other things that I do, it helps you with getting a better functional cover. So just like that, and again, I'm gonna go all around. Okay, that was the final piece. So again, let's give that a good burnish. And now I'm going to cut off my corners. So I'm going to cut on the pencil line that I've made earlier. Okay, so here we are. Now there's one more step that I like to take while making, before I'm starting to wrap. I was looking for a particular bone folder. I have several types of bone folder, and you really don't have to have all those types of bone folders. Just use what you have. Maybe you have like a little embossing tool. That's what I normally use, but I don't have that at the moment. So I'm using this bone folder that has a little bit of a flat edge. I'm placing my self-healing cutting mat here because it's a little soft, so I can give a little bit more pressure. I'm going to place this on the cardstock up against the chipboard, and I'm going to basically score the cardstock along my chipboard edge, and I'm giving quite some pressure. So I'm going to go all around, and it's a little bit of a longer piece, so that sometimes gives some trouble, right? And that's one of the reasons that people enjoy the other method. So there are just several ways of making a cover, and you just have to find what works for you and what you prefer. That's all that's to it. And I think that's with everything, with making these type of projects. There are so many different ways of doing things. So I always encourage people to find basically as many people as you can on YouTube that you enjoy watching. And you will notice that people are having different ways of doing stuff. And it's a good thing to just see and take from them what you like, or at least give it a try if you think you might like it. Now I'm not sure, did I go all around already? Yeah, it looks like it. And combine things, you know, like maybe there are things that you like how I do it, and then there are other things that you say, oh no, but I'd rather do that differently. Like this person on YouTube is doing it, or you figured something out yourself. That's all fine, right? I always encourage people to, you know, try to find your own style and your own way of doing things. And the best way of doing that is by finding as many people as you can to learn from, right? So I'm also pre-folding it a little bit. Now on this longer side that can be a little bit tricky, but and then the short side, that's for me a little bit tricky because I have to take the camera in account here. So pre-fold it a little bit on your work surface by just pushing it on your work surface. And now we are ready to start wrapping this. I'm also going to use a little bit of wet glue. I'm going to again place that on the cardstock but up against the chipboard. It helps me with keeping my cardstock in place a little bit, but also for a nice clean edge. So I always start on the long sides. So I'm removing both tape backings there, and then I peel back my tape backing here slightly. Get my glue. And I use 2 different bone folders for this, but again, you use what you have, right? Don't feel that it's absolutely necessary to have all these different type of bone folders, because really it's not. So it's just a thin strip of glue. That was actually a little bit too much that came out there, but that's not a problem, but you don't need a whole lot. And then I'm going to start with bone folder here that has a little bit of a flat edge. And I'm going to use that to really push it up my chipboard edge. Now it's already pre-folded a little bit, so it's not that difficult to get under, but that flat edge helps me with getting under the paper. Now it's starting to stand up against the chipboard edge. My wet glue is helping there. Now I'm holding my cardstock. I don't pull on it, I'm just holding it in place. Now this is a long piece, so a little bit more tricky. And now when I start to fold over, I'm going to change to this bone folder. And I go over several times to break down the cardstock. Now I feel that I can stick it down here. And I always like to stick down the middle part first and then work my way out in a diagonal movement. So exaggerated, I'm going like this. And rub out the air and try to have it nicely up against the chipboard edge. So a little faster because that's what I would normally do. And then I end with going up against the edge, and that's more something that's in my system. I'm not sure if it really does something. And then I do the other long side. I'm going to repeat exactly the same thing. I'll just remove these now. Again, just rub it up against the edge, make it stand up. That's where the wet glue helps me. And then I'm going to hold it in place. So I don't like to go too fast, really break down the fibers. Take time on this, and when I feel that it's really starting to stick down, I place it down. Okay, so the long sides are done. We need to go to the short sides. They are easier to fold over, but we need to take an extra step because we have a little bit of overhang of our cardstock here. That's what we want because we don't want to have naked corners. We want to have them nicely covered, but we need to fold that in. So I'm going to push my bone folder up against the edge and make like a 90-degree fold here to push that little bit in and make it as flat as I can. And this is just something, doesn't matter how often you do it. Sometimes it's perfect, sometimes it's not perfect. So again, a little bit of wet glue there. Rub it up against the edge. And this just folds over a little quicker and easier than the long side. And then we have our corners nicely covered with cardstock there. And sometimes when I'm not completely happy, I just use this bone folder and bang it a little bit, basically. Okay, same thing here. So first fold in our overhangings, make it flat. And again. So now it's taking me quite some time to do this cover, right? Because I'm explaining every step. If I would do this without filming, it would take me less than half an hour to get my cover completely done. Okay. So one final thing, and we will repeat that later on again, but I always like to do that now as well, is to fold these little pieces here in the gusset. And while I'm doing that, while I'm lifting up the cover slightly, so you don't stress the cardstock out too much. And right now I'm just breaking down the fibers of this layer of cardstock. And that's why I like to burnish, to just work those fibers. Because yes, you can just easily lift it up and fold it flat at this moment if you want to. But I like to be a little bit more gentle with my cardstock. Okay, so the outside of our cover is now done, and just these clean edges here, how that is a continuous cardstock nice and sturdy, that just makes me happy. So first I am going to clean up the spines here before I'm going to add magnets, because I'm going to use magnets as a closure on this. But let's clean up that inside so we don't have to worry about that tape there anymore. So for that we need to cut 2 pieces of cardstock. We need 2 pieces 6 1/4 by 4. Now this is only 6, right? Yep. Is this 4? 4 1/4. Well, in my case, I have these pieces here that I can make work, but I have an extra 1/2 inch on my cardstock there. So my cardstock, before I cut it, is actually 12 inches by 12 1/2 inches, because I have this little brand strip on it here. But I'm not going to see that, so I can just use that. Are they the same size? Well, it doesn't really matter. It's enough. So 6 1/4 by 4. So I'm going to cut 2 of these down to 6 1/4 in height. So probably if you have 12 by 12 inch paper, you can probably make that work as well, that scrap piece. So 6 1/4. Yep. Just checking if I like that measurements, but I do. Now these pieces, I'm going to give a good coverage with double-sided tape. I have seen people use that purple glue stick on this as well. I don't like it. It doesn't work for me, so I'm not doing that. I'm doing it with double-sided tape. Now I have a large roll, 2-inch roll here, that I'm just going to use to cover up the back side of these pieces of cardstock here. If you don't have a big roll, I recommend you to go around the perimeter and perhaps place a strip of tape along your chipboard edges here, and then fill in the rest with some wet glue. But those are your most important spots. Okay, so if your tape overlaps a little bit, that's totally fine. I'm giving this a burnish. I will add some extra 1/4 inch tape on this one. So I'm just going to start with 1. I am going to combine this with wet glue, by the way. So we're going to place this on our spine, try to center it, try to center out the space from top and bottom, which should be about a little less than 1/8 of an inch on top and bottom. So remove this tape backing. I'm going to remove both tape backings here. That will be just fine. And I'm going to combine it with wet glue for wiggle time mostly, because I have a good coverage, right? But I don't want this to stick. I want it to be able to lift up. So I don't use too much, but it looks like a lot, but it's a really thin strip that I'm placing on here. At least that's what I'm aiming for. Sometimes the glue comes out a little bit harder than I want to. So I fill in these parts a little bit, because I just don't want it to stick down until I'm ready for it to stick down, basically. I'm going to place this on the spine, so I'm eyeballing that I'm centering it. And I'm going to burnish it on the spine. This is again another step that just takes away the stress from your cardstock a little bit. So now I'm burnishing it in that first gusset area. And I'm going to lift up this cover a little bit while I'm doing that. Again, breaking down fibers. And I need to do this actually a little quick before my glue dries, right? So now it's coming up here, you see that? That's what I want. My cardstock is really pushed into the gusset, and now from that gusset I'm going to burnish it outwards. So that's one side, and I like to turn it around to do the other side, because I just work a little easier on this side. So I try to really bring it from the spine into the gusset. I can place my hand underneath so I can lift this up a little bit. Place it down. You see it's still not stuck down here, and that's why I use the wet glue, so it's able to lift up. If I don't have the wet glue on there, this double-sided tape, when it sticks down, it's sticking down. Okay, I might need to burnish some spots here and there later on a little bit better, but that's one side. And again, this just helps me with having a nice functional cover without having too much stress on my cardstock. So for the other side, I've moved that tape back and I'm going to add, and this is just me being just too precise, right? Do you really need that extra strip of 1/4 inch tape there? Probably not. Yep. But still I want. So same thing, a little bit of glue. I'm going to go around the perimeter because I don't want it to stick down. And slightly, just a thin strip. Right there. I try to make sure that I stay in frame and somewhat straight, but I just know that I tend to go everywhere with my project. So again, burnishing it down on the spine. And then bring it in that gusset. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing as I did on the other side. Okay. Now this side is stuck down slightly, so I hope that I am still... See, that's why you need to work fast, but I am carefully... I can lift it up slightly, so... That's why the glue is on there. And then from the gusset area, bring it down on your chipboard piece. Okay, nice. So that makes it nice and sturdy, covered up. And I'm going to have it in this orientation where we fold this to this side and then that one will go over. I'm going to use magnets to keep it closed. You can also use ribbon or other types of closures, of course, if you want to. And you can also clean this part up if you want to. I'm kind of thinking, am I going to do that in a new video? I feel like this is all we've done for this video. But I'm at it for quite some time already. Yeah, I think we're gonna do this in a new video. We will finish it up, place some magnets, and I'm going to decide if we're first going to do the frame or first going to do the building on the inside. Yeah, so I have some decision making to do. So this is at least the base cover, and we will continue on this pretty soon. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the project so far, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye-bye.